Emma Chen pressed her face against the cool window of the school bus, watching the neighborhoods change as they drove toward Maplewood Elementary. First came the big houses with their manicured lawns and three-car garages, then the smaller ranch homes with tidy flower beds, and finally, just before her stop, the Sunset Mobile Home community where she lived with Nai, her grandmother. At 8 years old, Emma had never thought much about the differences between where she lived and where her classmates lived. Home was the cozy double-wide trailer with its cheerful yellow curtains that Nai had sewn by hand, the tiny garden where they grew bok choy and tomatoes, and the warm smell of jasmine tea that always filled their kitchen. It was where Nai told her stories about dragons and brave princesses, where they did puzzles together on rainy afternoons, and where Emma felt completely loved and safe. Since her parents had died in the car accident 2 years ago, this had been her whole world, and it had felt like enough, more than enough. Nai worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, cleaning offices at night and watching Mrs. Patterson's baby during the day. Money was tight, but they had each other, and Emma had learned to find joy in small treasures. A perfect autumn leaf, a library book she'd been waiting for, or the way the sunset painted their trailer walls golden every evening. That Tuesday started like any other. Emma wore her favorite shirt, a hand-me-down from her cousin, that was slightly too big but had a beautiful butterfly embroidered on the front. Nai had packed her lunch with extra care, a thermos of homemade soup, rice with sesame oil, and a small container of cut fruit. Emma felt happy and confident as she walked into school, her backpack bouncing with each step. The cafeteria buzzed with its usual lunchtime energy. Emma found an empty spot at a table near the window and unpacked her lunch, humming softly to herself. She was looking forward to the afternoon's science lesson about butterflies. Maybe she could share about the monarch she and Nai had watched emerge from its cocoon last week. That's when Tyler Martinez's voice cut through the ambient chatter like a knife. "Oh my God, guys, look at trailer trash!" Emma with her weird foreign food again. Tyler's voice was loud enough to carry across several tables. Emma's head snapped up, her chopsticks freezing halfway to her mouth. "I bet that smells as nasty as her trashy trailer park. My mom says those places are full of drugs and criminals." A few students at Tyler's table snickered. Emma felt her cheeks burn as she noticed other kids turning to look at her. Tyler wasn't finished. "I drove past that dump where she lives last weekend. The trailers look ready to fall apart. No wonder she always wears the same ratty clothes." He performed an exaggerated shudder. "I'd be so embarrassed if I had to live in a trailer. It's like being homeless, but worse because everyone can see how poor you are." The laughter grew louder. Emma's vision blurred as tears began to form. She'd never felt ashamed of her clothes before. Nai washed and mended them with such care. She'd never felt embarrassed about their home. It was filled with more love than she could measure. But suddenly, seeing herself through Tyler's cruel eyes, everything felt different, wrong, shameful. "Maybe that's why her parents died," Tyler continued with casual cruelty that took Emma's breath away. "They couldn't stand living like that either." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. The cafeteria seemed to spin around her as the laughter echoed in her ear. She stood up so quickly her chair scraped loudly against the floor, abandoning her lunch and rushing toward the bathroom as tears streamed down her face. In the cold, echoing bathroom, Emma locked herself in the farthest stall and sobbed until her chest ached. For the first time in her life, she felt truly ashamed of who she was and where she came from. Maybe Tyler was right. Maybe their home was embarrassing. Maybe she should lie, tell people she lived somewhere else, pretend to be someone she was. The thought made her cry even harder, because deep down she loved her life with Nai. But now that love felt like something she needed to hide. Emma managed to compose herself enough to get through the rest of the school day, but the weight of Tyler's words pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. She sat quietly during afternoon lessons, avoiding eye contact with classmates and dreading the moment someone might ask her about lunch. When the final bell rang, she was first out the door, practically running to catch her bus. During the ride home, Emma stared out the window again, but this time the familiar route felt different. The transition from the nice neighborhoods to the trailer park seemed starker now, more obvious. She found herself noticing things she'd never paid attention to before: the chain-link fences, the older cars in driveways, the way some of the trailers had patches of rust or peeling paint. Was this really what Tyler saw when he looked at her world? Nai was waiting at their small kitchen table when Emma walked through the door, sorting through mail with reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up with her usual warm smile, the kind that always made Emma feel like the most important person in the world. Xiao Bao, she said, using Emma's pet name that meant little treasure. How was school today? Emma forced a smile and mumbled, fine, but Nai Nai's sharp eyes caught the subtle signs of distress. The way Emma's shoulders slumped, how she avoided direct eye contact, the slight tremor in her voice. Nai Nai said quietly, setting down her mail. Fine is a very small word for such a big day. Come sit with me. Emma hesitated. Part of her wanted to run to her room and hide under her covers, but Nai Nai's gentle tone drew her forward. She climbed onto the chair across from her grandmother, still wearing her backpack-like armor. For several minutes they sat in comfortable silence. Nai Nai poured jasmine tea into 2 cups, a real cup for herself and Emma's special butterfly mug. The familiar ritual began to ease the knot in Emma's chest. When I was about your age in China, Nai Nai began softly, there was a girl in my village who said cruel things about my family. We were very poor, even poorer than her family, and she would make jokes about my patched clothes and my mother's job cleaning other people's houses. Emma looked up surprised. Nai Nai rarely talked about her childhood in detail. What did you do? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. At first I wanted to say something just as cruel back to her. I thought about all the mean things I could say about her family, her appearance, anything that might hurt her the way she hurt me. Nai Nai's weathered hands wrapped around her teacup, but my mother taught me something very wise. She said that when people are cruel to others it's usually because they're carrying pain of their own. Emma frowned, thinking about Tyler's confident laugh, his expensive sneakers, the way other kids always gathered around him. But Tyler isn't sad, Nai Nai. He has everything. He's popular and his family has money. And Tyler Martinez? Nai Nai's eyebrows rose slightly. The boy from the blue house on Elm Street. Emma nodded, wondering how her grandmother knew where Tyler lived. Nai Nai was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Miss Patterson mentioned that the Martinez family is going through some difficult times. Mr. Martinez lost his job at the factory last month, and they might have to sell their house. Sometimes when people are scared about their own situation, they try to make themselves feel better by pointing out what they think are other people's problems. This information stunned Emma. Tyler, who seemed to have everything, was facing the possibility of losing his home. The same Tyler who had mocked her for living in a trailer, but that doesn't make it okay for him to be mean, Emma said, though her anger was beginning to shift into something more complex. A mixture of hurt and confusion and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. No, it doesn't make it okay, Nai Nai agreed, but it helps us understand, and when we understand why someone acts the way they do, we can choose how to respond with wisdom instead of just reacting with anger. Emma sipped her tea, letting her grandmother's words settle in her mind. The shame that had consumed her all afternoon was still there, but it felt different now, smaller. Somehow, less about who she was and more about Tyler's fear and pain. Nai Nai, Emma said finally, is our home really embarrassing? Her grandmother's eyes filled with a fierce, protective love. Xiao Bao, our home is filled with more love per square foot than houses 10 times its size. The size of a home has nothing to do with the size of the hearts that live inside it. Anyone who can't see that is missing something very important. For the first time since lunch, Emma felt a small spark of her usual confidence returning. Their trailer might be small, but it was theirs and it was full of love and warmth and all the things that truly matter. That night, Emma lay in her narrow bed staring at the ceiling, her mind churning with conflicting emotions. Part of her still wanted to hide from Tyler, to avoid him completely, and hope he'd forget about her. Another part wanted to march up to him and tell him exactly what she thought of his cruelty. But Nai Nai's words kept echoing in her head. When we understand why someone acts the way they do, we can choose how to respond with wisdom. What would wisdom look like in this situation? The next morning at breakfast, Emma was unusually quiet, picking at her kanji while deep in thought. Nai Nai watched her with patient eyes, recognizing the signs of her granddaughter's active mind at work. I've been thinking about Tyler, Emma said finally. If his family might lose their house, he must be really scared. That's very perceptive of you, Xiao Bao. When I'm scared, sometimes I get grumpy too. Remember when I was worried about starting 2nd grade? I was mean to you for a whole week. Nai Nai nodded, remembering. You were trying to push away your feelings by pushing away the people who loved you. Emma set down her spoon, a strange idea beginning to form in her mind. Nai, what if instead of being mean back to Tyler, I did something nice for him? Her grandmother's eyebrows rose in surprise. What did you have in mind? I don't know yet. But maybe if someone was kind to him, he wouldn't feel like he needed to be mean to feel better about himself. Over the next few days, Emma became a detective of sorts, quietly observing Tyler during school hours. She noticed things she'd never paid attention to before, how he always sat alone while eating lunch, despite being surrounded by other kids, how he sometimes stared out the window during class with a worried expression, how his usually pristine clothes were starting to look a little worn around the edges. But it was during library time that Emma made her crucial discovery. She was browsing the astronomy section. She'd always loved looking at the stars with Nai, when she noticed Tyler at a nearby table, completely absorbed in a book about space exploration. His face had lost its usual hard edge. Instead, he looked younger, almost vulnerable, as he studied pictures of distant galaxies and nebulae. Emma watched as he carefully traced the rings of Saturn with his finger, his expression full of wonder. When the librarian announced it was time to return to class, Tyler reluctantly closed the book and put it back on the shelf, but not before lingering over the cover one more time. That afternoon, Emma had an idea so unexpected it made her gasp out loud during math class. Miss Rodriguez looked at her with concern, but Emma just shook her head and tried to focus on fractions, while her heart raced with possibility. After school, she practically bounced with excitement as she waited for Nai to come home from work. The moment her grandmother walked through the door, Emma launched into her plan. Nai, I know what I want to do for Tyler. He loves space and astronomy, and I think, maybe he's sad that he can't afford his own telescope or space books. What if I gave him something space-related, something that would make him happy? Nai sat down slowly, studying her granddaughter's earnest face. That's a very generous idea, Emma, but what did you have in mind, and where would we get the money for such a gift? Emma took a deep breath. I have my birthday money, $37, and I was thinking, remember when we went to that pawn shop downtown to look for a rice cooker? They had telescopes there too. Maybe we could find a small one that I could afford. Emma, Nai said gently, that's your birthday money. You've been saving it for months, talking about buying that art set you wanted. I know, but Emma struggled to find the words. The art set would make me happy, but helping Tyler might make both of us happy. And maybe if he's happier, he won't need to be mean to other people anymore. Nai was quiet for a long moment, and Emma worried she might say no. But then her grandmother's face broke into a proud smile. You have a very wise heart, Xiaobao, much wiser than most adults. Are you sure this is what you want to do? Emma nodded vigorously. I'm sure. But Nai, what if he doesn't like it? What if he's mean about it too? What if he thinks I'm being stupid? Those are all possibilities. Nai admitted. Kindness is always a risk. The person might not understand it, or they might not be ready to receive it. But that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. Sometimes the most important thing is not how someone responds to our kindness, but that we chose to offer it in the first place. That weekend, Emma and Nai took the bus downtown to the pawn shop. The owner, a kind man named Mr. Pearson, remembered them from their previous visit. When Emma explained what she was looking for, he led them to a dusty corner, where several small telescopes sat on a high shelf. This one here, he said, carefully lifting down a compact telescope with a few scratches but intact lenses, is a good beginner model. The previous owner took good care of it. Normally I'd ask $45 for it, but he looked at Emma's hopeful face and her small stack of crumpled bills. For a young astronomer, I think $35 would be fair. Emma counted out her money carefully, her hands shaking slightly with excitement and nervousness. Mr. Peterson threw in a basic star chart and a small cleaning cloth. Every astronomer needs these, he said with a wink. As they rode the bus home, the telescope carefully wrapped in newspaper on Emma's lap, she felt a mixture of anticipation and terror. She'd spent nearly all her birthday money on a gift for someone who had been cruel to her. Was she being wise or was she being foolish? Nai, she said quietly, what if this doesn't work? Her grandmother squeezed her hand. Then you'll know you tried to make the world a little kinder. That's never a failure, Xiaobao. That's always a victory. That night, Emma practiced what she would say to Tyler. She stood in front of her mirror, holding the telescope, rehearsing different approaches. Should she be formal, casual? Should she explain why she was giving it to him, or just let the gift speak for itself? Finally, she settled on simple honesty. She would tell him she noticed he liked astronomy and thought he might enjoy having his own telescope. She wouldn't mention his meanness or try to make him feel guilty. She would just offer the gift with no strings attached and hope for the best. As she fell asleep that night, Emma felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened tomorrow, she knew she was doing something her parents would have been proud of, something that honored the love and wisdom Nai had taught her. She was choosing to respond to darkness with light, and that felt like the most grown-up thing she'd ever done. Emma barely slept that night. She kept the telescope hidden under her bed, wrapped in one of Nai's silk scarves to keep it safe. Every few hours, she would wake up and remember what she planned to do, her stomach fluttering with a mixture of excitement and terror. The next morning, she could hardly eat breakfast. Nai packed the telescope carefully in Emma's backpack, padding it with extra clothes to prevent any damage. "Remember, Xiaobao," her grandmother said as she walked Emma to the bus stop. "Whatever happens today, you are choosing love over fear. That makes you braver than most people twice your age." At school, Emma clutched her backpack protectively, hyper-aware of the precious cargo inside. She spotted Tyler by his locker before first period, surrounded by his usual group of friends. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she approached, but she forced herself to keep walking. "Tyler," she said softly, when there was a brief lull in conversation. He turned, and his expression immediately hardened when he saw her. "What do you want, trailer girl?" The phrase stung, but Emma had prepared herself for this. Could I talk to you privately for a minute, please?" Tyler's friends snickered, and one of them made a joke about Emma having a crush. Tyler's cheeks reddened, and Emma could see his embarrassment turning into anger. "Whatever you want to say, you can say it here," he said loudly, crossing his arms. Emma's carefully rehearsed words evaporated. She glanced around at the curious faces surrounding them, and realized this wasn't going to go the way she'd imagined, but she'd come this far. I brought you something," she said, her voice barely audible. She unzipped her backpack and carefully pulled out the telescope, still wrapped in Nai's scarf. The hallway grew quiet. Tyler stared at the bundle in her hands, his expression shifting from hostility to confusion. "I noticed you like astronomy," Emma continued, her words coming out in a rush. "I saw you reading about space in the library, and you looked so interested, and I thought maybe you'd like to have your own telescope to look at the stars." She held out the gift, her hands trembling slightly. Tyler made no move to take it. Instead, he looked around at his friends, who were watching with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Emma could practically see him weighing his options: accept the gift and risk looking weak, or reject it and maintain his tough image. He chose cruelty. "Are you serious right now?" Tyler's voice was loud enough to attract attention from other students passing by. "You think I want some piece of junk from a pawn shop? This is probably broken garbage that fell off the back of a truck." Emma's face burned with humiliation, but she held the telescope steady. "It's not broken. Mr. Peterson tested it, and it works perfectly. You can see Saturn's rings, and I don't want your charity trailer trash," Tyler interrupted, his voice getting louder. "Keep your junk for yourself. Maybe you can use it to look for a real house to live in." His friends erupted in laughter, and more students began to gather, sensing drama. Emma felt tears starting to form, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't cry in front of everyone again. "I'm not giving it to you because I feel sorry for you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm giving it to you because I saw how happy you looked when you were reading about space, and I thought everyone deserves to see beautiful things." For just a moment, Tyler's mask slipped. Emma caught a flash of something vulnerable in his eyes: surprise, maybe even gratitude. But then he seemed to remember his audience. "This is so pathetic," he said, though his voice lacked some of its earlier venom. "The poor little trailer girl trying to buy friends with garage sale junk. I wouldn't be caught dead with that thing." But even as he spoke, Emma noticed he was staring at the telescope with something that looked like longing. She made a decision that surprised even herself. "Okay," she said simply, and set the telescope down on the floor beside his locker. "If you change your mind, it's here." Then she walked away, her head held high despite the whispers and giggles following her down the hall. The telescope sat by Tyler's locker all morning like an accusation. Other students asked him about it, and each time he had to explain, and embellish the story of crazy Emma and her weird gift. But Emma noticed that he never actually threw it away or asked a teacher to remove it. It just sat there, waiting. During lunch, Emma sat at her usual spot, trying to pretend everything was normal, but she could feel eyes on her from across the cafeteria, and the whispers seemed louder than usual. Some students were clearly confused by what they'd witnessed. Why would someone give a gift to their bully? Others seemed to think Emma was either very stupid or very strange. Mrs. Rodriguez, their teacher, pulled Emma aside after lunch. "Emma, I heard about what happened this morning. That was very unusual. Are you all right?" Emma nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. "I just wanted to be nice to him." "That's very admirable, but Tyler hasn't been kind to you. You don't owe him anything." "I know," Emma said, "but maybe he needed someone to be kind to him anyway." Mrs. Rodriguez studied Emma's face for a long moment, then smiled softly. "You're a very special young lady, Emma Chen. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That afternoon, as students were gathering their things to go home, Emma glanced toward Tyler's locker. The telescope was gone. Her heart jumped. Had he taken it? Had a teacher confiscated? Had someone thrown it away? She got her answer the next morning when she arrived at school. Tyler was at his locker, and there was the telescope, back in its spot on the floor. But something was different. The silk scarf was neatly folded beside it, and there was a small piece of paper tucked under one corner. When no one was looking, Emma quickly grabbed the note. In Tyler's messy handwriting, it said, "I looked at Saturn last night. The rings are real." Emma's heart soared. He had taken it home. He had used it. He had seen something beautiful through the gift she'd given him, but then why was it back by his locker? She got her answer during morning announcements, when Tyler made a big show of kicking the telescope and announcing to anyone who would listen, "I can't believe that weird girl is still trying to force her trash on me. Someone should throw this junk away before it stinks up the whole hallway." But Emma had seen the note. She knew the truth. Tyler might be putting on a show for everyone else, but something had changed. The telescope had shown him Saturn's rings, and for at least one moment, he had seen beauty instead of ugliness, wonder instead of fear. That was enough. That was everything. For the next week, a strange dance continued between Emma and Tyler. The telescope would disappear from his locker overnight, only to reappear the next morning, with Tyler making increasingly elaborate shows of rejecting it. But Emma began to notice small changes. Tyler's insults lost their sharp edge. He stopped making jokes about her lunch, and once, when another student tried to mock Emma's clothes, Tyler actually told them to knock it off. Emma said nothing about these small kindnesses. She simply continued to be herself, quiet, thoughtful, and steadfast in her belief that the person who had seen Saturn's rings was Tyler's true self, not the boy who performed cruelty for an audience. The turning point came on a Friday during their weekly My Hero presentation. Each student was supposed to talk about someone they admired and explain why. Emma had prepared to talk about Nai, but when Mrs. Rodriguez called Tyler's name, something unexpected happened. Tyler walked to the front of the classroom with his usual swagger, but Emma noticed his hands were shaking slightly. He'd prepared note cards about a famous basketball player. She could see the stats and facts written on them from her seat. But as he stood before the class, Tyler's eyes found Emma's across the room. For a long moment he just stood there staring at his cards. The classroom grew restless. Someone whispered, "Just read it, Tyler." Mrs. Rodriguez looked concerned. Then Tyler set his cards aside. "I want to talk about a different kind of hero," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "Someone who taught me something important." The room fell silent. This wasn't the Tyler they knew, confident, loud, always in control. "Last week someone gave me a gift," Tyler continued, his voice growing stronger. Someone I hadn't been very nice to. Actually, I was really mean to this person. I said terrible things about where they lived and how they dressed, and I made fun of them in front of everyone." Emma's heart began to race. Several students turned to look at her, recognition dawning on their faces. "I thought I was better than this person because my family had more money, because I lived in a bigger house, because I had nicer clothes. But the truth is," Tyler's voice cracked slightly, "the truth is, I was scared. My dad lost his job, and we might lose our house, and I felt like everything was falling apart. So I tried to make myself feel better by making someone else feel worse." The classroom was completely silent now. Even Mrs. Rodriguez seemed transfixed. "But this person didn't get mad at me. They didn't try to hurt me back. Instead, they gave me something beautiful. They gave me a telescope. Tyler's eyes found Emma's again, and you know what? That night, I saw Saturn's rings for the first time in my life. I saw something so amazing, so perfect, that I cried. I actually cried because it was so beautiful. A few students shifted uncomfortably, but Tyler pressed on, and I realized something. This person saw me reading about space in the library. They noticed that I loved astronomy, even though I'd never told anyone because I thought it wasn't cool enough. They saw something good in me when I couldn't see anything good in myself. They gave me their birthday money, all of it to buy me something that would make me happy. Tyler's voice was shaking now, but he didn't stop. Emma Chen is my hero, he said, looking directly at her. Not because she's strong or famous or rich, but because she chose to be kind when she could have chosen to be cruel. She chose to see the good in someone who had been terrible to her. She taught me that being brave isn't about hurting other people to make yourself feel better. Being brave is choosing to love someone even when they don't deserve it. The classroom erupted. Some students gasped, others whispered excitedly, and Emma heard at least 2 people start crying. But Emma only had eyes for Tyler, who was walking toward her desk. Emma, he said, his voice barely audible over the commotion. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for everything I said. You were right, your home isn't about how big it is, or how much it costs. It's about love, and I can tell you live in a home full of love. Emma stood up slowly, tears streaming down her face. Tyler, wait, he said, holding up a hand, there's something else I need to say. He turned back to address the entire class, his voice strong and clear again. Emma, when you gave me that telescope, you said everyone deserves to see beautiful things, but you didn't just show me Saturn's rings. You showed me how to be a better person. You showed me that the most beautiful thing in the world isn't something you see through a telescope. It's the kindness that lives in people's hearts. Tyler's voice broke completely on the last words. You forgave me before I even apologized. You gave me love when I gave you hate. If that's not what a hero looks like, I don't know what is. The room fell silent, except for the sound of muffled crying. Mrs. Rodriguez wiped her eyes with a tissue. Even some of the toughest kids in class were clearly moved. Emma walked toward Tyler, her heart full of emotions she couldn't name. When she reached him, she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She hugged him. I forgave you the moment I decided to buy that telescope, she whispered. I just wanted you to see something beautiful, because I knew you had beauty inside you too. Tyler hugged her back, crying openly now. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Around them, the classroom had transformed. Students were crying, talking in hushed, amazed voices, looking at Emma and Tyler with something approaching awe. Mrs. Rodriguez finally found her voice. Class, she said softly, I think we've just witnessed something extraordinary. We've seen what real courage looks like, and what real heroism means. Emma, Tyler, thank you for showing us all how to be better people. As the bell rang and students began to file out, many stopped to speak to Emma and Tyler. Some apologized for laughing at Emma's humiliation. Others thanked Tyler for his honesty, but most just seemed stunned by what they'd witnessed. A transformation so complete and genuine that it challenged everything they thought they knew about strength, kindness, and what it meant to be brave. Emma felt like she was floating. The shame that had consumed her just weeks ago was completely gone, replaced by a warm sense of pride and purpose. She had chosen love over hate, understanding over anger, and somehow, impossibly, it had worked better than any revenge ever could. The change in Emma's classroom was immediate and profound. Word of Tyler's presentation spread through the school like wildfire, but instead of the usual playground gossip, students spoke in hushed, reverent tones about what they had witnessed. By the end of the day, even kids from other grades had heard about the girl who gave her bully a telescope, and the boy who chose to tell the truth. That afternoon, as Emma packed her backpack, Tyler approached her desk one more time. Emma, he said quietly, would you maybe want to come to my house this weekend? I could show you Saturn through the telescope. I mean, if you want to. Emma smiled, remembering all the nights she and Nai had looked at stars from their small back porch. I'd love that, but could you come to my house instead? I want you to meet my Nai. She's the one who taught me about kindness. Tyler nodded eagerly. I'd really like that. The transformation didn't stop with Tyler. Over the following weeks, Emma noticed remarkable changes throughout her classroom and beyond. Sarah, a girl who had always been quiet and withdrawn, began speaking up more after seeing Emma's courage. Marcus, who had a habit of making mean jokes, stopped mid-sentence one day and apologized instead. Even the lunch ladies commented on how much kinder the students seemed to be toward each other. Mrs. Rodriguez asked Emma and Tyler if they would be willing to share their story with other classes. Soon, they were visiting younger grades, talking about kindness, understanding, and the courage it takes to see past someone's hurtful behavior to the pain underneath. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in Tyler himself. He became Emma's fiercest protector and most loyal friend. When a sixth grader made a comment about Emma's shabby backpack, Tyler stepped forward immediately. "That backpack belongs to one of the bravest people I know," he said firmly. "And if you have a problem with it, you have a problem with me." The sixth grader, surprised by Tyler's intensity, quickly backed down, but Emma touched Tyler's arm gently. "It's okay," she said. "He probably doesn't understand yet. Maybe someday someone will show him kindness when he needs it most, and then he'll understand too." Tyler looked at her with amazement. "How do you do that? How do you always see the good in people?" "Nai taught me that everyone has light inside them," Emma replied. "Sometimes it's just buried under hurt or fear, but it's always there." 3 weeks after Tyler's presentation, he finally visited Emma's home. He had been nervous about it, worried that he might accidentally say something hurtful about their modest surroundings. But the moment Nai opened the door and welcomed him with her warm smile and immediate offer of tea and cookies, all his anxiety melted away. "Tyler," Nai said as they sat around the small kitchen table, "Emma has told me so much about you. I understand you love astronomy." Tyler nodded, glancing around the cozy space. The trailer was indeed small, but every surface held evidence of love. Hand-embroidered cushions, photographs of Emma and her parents, small plants thriving in makeshift planters, books stacked carefully on homemade shelves. "Miss Chen," Tyler said slowly, "I need to tell you something. I was really mean to Emma. I said terrible things about your home, and I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything." Nai reached across the table and patted his hand. "Tyler, do you know what makes a home beautiful?" Tyler shook his head. "Love," she said simply. "A home's beauty comes from the love that lives inside it, not from its size or cost. Emma and I have more love in this small space than we know what to do with. That's what makes it beautiful." Tyler looked around again, and this time he saw what Emma had always seen: the careful attention to making their small space warm and welcoming, the way every object was placed with intention and care, the sense of peace that permeated everything. "It is beautiful," he said, and meant it completely. "It's the most beautiful home I've ever been in." That evening, the three of them sat on Emma and Nai's small back porch, taking turns looking through the telescope at the star-filled sky. Tyler showed them Saturn's rings, Jupiter's moons, and the Orion Nebula, but more than astronomy lessons, they shared stories, laughter, and the kind of comfortable silence that only comes between true friends. "You know," Tyler said as his mom came to pick him up, "my family might still lose our house, but if we do, I won't be ashamed anymore. I know now that home isn't about the building you live in." Emma hugged him goodbye. "And if you do have to move, you'll always have friends who care about you. That's another kind of home." Months later, Tyler's family did have to sell their house and move to a smaller apartment across town. But by then, Tyler had learned Emma's lessons so well that he helped other students in his new school understand that kindness was more important than appearances, that understanding was more powerful than judgment. And Emma, she continued to live in the same small trailer with Nai, but now she walked through the world with a new understanding of her own strength. She had learned that the most powerful form of revenge wasn't cruelty returned for cruelty, it was choosing to love someone so completely that their own capacity for love awakened in response. The telescope still sat in Tyler's room, now in his family's modest apartment, but every time he looked through it at the vast, beautiful universe, he remembered a small girl who had seen light in him when he could only see darkness in himself. And he remembered that sometimes the most extraordinary thing you can do is choose kindness when the whole world expects you to choose something else. Emma's story spread far beyond their school, carried by students to their families, by teachers to their colleagues, by parents to their friends. It became a reminder that children often possess wisdom that adults have forgotten, and that the smallest acts of love can create the most profound transformation. Years later, When people asked Emma about that day in the cafeteria, and the choice that changed everything, she would smile and say, Nai taught me that we always have a choice between adding more darkness to the world, or adding more light. I just decided to be a little candle. And in choosing to be that light, Emma Chen had illuminated not just Tyler's life, but the lives of everyone who witnessed what happened when an 8-year-old girl chose love over revenge, understanding over anger, and hope over despair. She had proven that the most brilliant comeback to cruelty isn't more cruelty, it's kindness so powerful it transforms the heart of the person who hurt you. That perhaps was the most beautiful thing any telescope could ever reveal.